Are you one of those people that have spent a fortune on blood tests, stool tests, amino acid test, organic test, really expensive tests that show you a lot of things, but you're still struggling with symptoms? Or maybe even had a hair tissue mineral analysis test, but you don't know where to go from here. Well, that is because a hair tissue mineral analysis is something that requires a long time to learn how to interpret. And many practitioners actually critique it and say it's not really all that reliable. And many people who do hair tests don't know what to do with it because they don't know their biochemical blueprint. It hasn't been explained to them. Now, I've been doing hair tests for a number of years, and it's taken me a long time to look at any hair test and to see the past, the present, and the future. What's going to happen to this person if changes are not put in place? So when I look at a hair test, I don't look at the obvious thing like other people do. High minerals, low minerals. Oh, high calcium, avoid calcium. Where's the high calcium coming from? Low selenium, let's take more selenium. It doesn't actually work like that. Your hair tissue mineral analysis is your complete cellular metabolism. And it's actually a snapshot of at least a couple of months, at least 6 months. And it also shows the psychological pattern, the stress pattern, the emotional patterns, which drive the minerals in a particular direction, because there are at least 80 mineral patterns on a hair test, and each one of them has its own unique variation. What causes these patterns? Our psychology, how we're burning our minerals. For example, we burn magnesium if we over-exercise or if we sweat in a sauna. We burn sodium, potassium if we're running marathons and sweating a lot. These are the major drivers of the metabolism. And just so you know, you can never have one mineral deficiency. You can't just be magnesium deficient without being calcium affected. Here's why. When you look at the mineral pattern, or you look at how minerals, you see that each one has a relationship with the other. They're either antagonizing or they're synergistic. They're working together or against one another. So if you were to take just magnesium, it's going to affect calcium and manganese and all the other minerals. So that could really create a problem. The whole thing is to have all the minerals available in our nutrition so that the body knows what to do with it. And if you do need to correct a mineral pattern, you certainly want to know what the imbalance is before you go correcting. Now, most people look at symptoms. They have cramps, they're not sleeping, start putting magnesium. But different metabolic types, different oxidation rates might actually need calcium in this particular instance, not magnesium, in order to stop the muscle cramps and go to sleep. Now, the other question is, why is a hair tissue more accurate than other blood tests? Well, your hair is not that important. So your body will throw away heavy metals, it'll throw out excesses into the hair. It's not going to throw it into the brain. If it can throw it into other tissues such as the liver and the kidneys, which actually deal with excretion of heavy metals. Now, blood, which most people rely on, is a very narrow field. Your blood is between 7.41, 7.45 ideal pH, which is alkaline. Very narrow. If it goes outside of that, say it goes to 7.55, extreme alkalinity, at that point people die. If it goes to extreme acidosis, 7.12, people die. It's still a very narrow field. With hair mineral analysis, it's much wider. It's a snapshot of how all minerals are affecting one another. And every single organ, such as the thyroid, the liver, the kidneys, actually need minerals. They need minerals to work at the optimal. So wherever there's a mineral deficiency, there will be a deficiency. There will be symptoms in other parts of the body. It just takes years to manifest. Now, I love this kind of stuff. When I read a hair test, it's like reading a novel about a person. And it has helped me overcome death, and it can help a lot of people navigate their multiple symptoms. On this hair test with Jody Jealous, it's a very interesting pattern because Jody actually took care of her health and went to a naturopath, to a GP, and they both said that something was wrong with her liver. When I looked at her hair test, I could see that there was a little more going on with her liver. She has very high calcium, and a calcium to potassium ratio is also very high. That lets me know a lot. It lets me know that she's actually calcium deficient, and technically she's calcifying. Her tissues are turning to stone. And of course, the pineal and the brain and all the other glands are calcifying. Another reason she's been seeing a chiropractor, pain in the neck. Now, these are all early signs that something is happening in our body, but we treat it as a symptom. Oh, I lifted my bag the wrong way. Oh, I slept in the wrong pillow. Well, it could actually be calcium, calcifying tissue. Also, her thyroid cellular metabolism is actually quite sluggish, and that needs to be improved, because for her to have more energy and for her to burn fat for energy, that ratio needs to come to ideally 4. And she has a selenium deficiency, which makes sense because you need selenium to convert thyroid hormones. So when we put all those things together, I'm also seeing the psychological pattern. Why did someone who's quite successful and is only 41 years old got into this pattern of a menopausal woman? How did this happen? There must have been some drivers, some stress, some psychology pattern that changed the pattern. And I could mention that because Jody allowed me to share that. She had a pattern of driving herself very hard, mind over matter, which is a great, noble pattern, but it does create carnal damage when we've been doing it for a couple of decades. So it's obviously time to change and reverse that pattern, and to get things done without driving oneself and creating this rigidity, creating this pushing through, which affects all the electrolytes, the calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. So as you could see on her pattern, that pattern is one of burnout. And that needs to be reversed, because if she were to continue this for 5 years, that would create a pattern of osteoporosis and osteoarthritis and probably kidney stone. That's why I love hair tissue mineral analysis, because it saved my life when nothing else was working, and it's a blueprint, it's a map for what's going to happen 3 to 5 years down the track if we don't make changes now. I've also worked with women who had hysterectomies, and when I looked at their hair test, I could see why. And in some ways it was too late. But if they would have done their hair test 3 years ago, we could have changed that pattern. They could have changed that pattern. Another very common pattern I see on the hair test, and it's like an epidemic, it's actually happening to a lot of people, is a high copper personality or high copper toxicity. And I'm seeing kids 4 years old, 7 years old who've got nightmares, whose teeth are not mineralizing, who are seeing a lot of specialists, and a whole lot of other issues not even thriving because they have this high copper. Now, high copper is actually a toxic copper. It means that there's something happening in the liver and the copper is building up. But it affects so many things because copper makes 300 enzymes. Copper is needed for bones, it's needed for thyroid, it's needed for adrenals, and it also makes neurotransmitters. So when that mineral is out, it's going to affect the whole person. And what is happening out there is that people aggressively chelate or bring copper down with high levels of zinc, which is just like making the person go through hell. It's like putting copper and zinc into a boxing match and watching those two fight with one another. That's what's happening. It's a terrible thing to do to people. I've seen some of my clients go through terrible detox, anxiety, panic attacks of being given high dose of ascorbic acid, high dose of zinc, which actually just detoxed copper in such a way that it left them feeling unmanageable and not coping with daily life. That is not necessary. Now, the most important thing about a hair test, and once you have your prognosis, which might not sound all that good, but it's important to know the truth, is what do you do afterwards? What happens afterwards? You get your supplements, you get your nutrition meal, you get all excited 3 months down the track, and it doesn't feel like it's working. And you know what? most people going through this journey right now as we speak. When I work with people, I have to address the emotional, psychological aspect that's showing up on a hair test, because minerals and psychology go together. You can't separate it. In fact, if you were just to take the supplements and the food and not work with the psychology, the mineral pattern is not going to change. It can alter, it can adapt, but it's not going to completely change. So it's really important to include both the pattern, the attitude of the person, the psychology, and even the emotions that are not being dealt with or expressed in changing the mineral pattern, because that way it's a complete coming out of a particular pattern that someone might have been in for more than 5-10 years. And it's more graceful, it takes a little bit longer, but it's thorough. And if you just do one or the other, it's a bit haphazard and people actually end up giving up, because synthetic supplements and eating a lot of cooked vegetables or special detox diet doesn't actually fully recover a person. But when you put emotional work, give them the right biochemical plan that they can do and that you can build on, that doesn't stress them too much, people come out of burnout, out of serious symptoms a little bit more gracefully, and they build resilience step by step. And I love seeing those kind of results. If you'd like to get a hair tissue analysis interpreted properly, thoroughly, with your past, present and future, click the link with this video and we can be talking soon.